Thank you for joining me. I'm Scott Ryan. Listening to a quote of Chuck Todd today on Rush Limbaugh's show. Chuck Todd of MSNBC said that if it were up to Republicans, we would still have slavery today. And Rush was talking about the fact that many Democrats are ignorant of the fact that Lincoln was a Republican. And how absurd that is. And of course it's absurd. I mean, the party of Lincoln was founded by the majority of the Whigs left I guess what you could say are the equivalent of their rhinos. The majority of the Whigs left a party that was hijacked by rhinos that day, because about 80% of them were anti-slavery. And so they got fed up and they left to form the Republican Party with a diminutive percentage of Democrats. And the Republican Party, the party of Lincoln, was founded not on the platform that the rhinos who have our party hijacked today, that are going to soon be irrelevant one way or the other. No, they weren't founded on those principles that are merely based upon your own back pocket. Of course, we're all for low taxes. We are all for freedom. We're for the Ayn Rand principles, but those are ancillary. Those are principles that come as a concomitant to freedom, which can only be realized through God, as our founders elucidated in the Declaration of Independence and in our founding documents. The Bible being the source used most frequently quoted and written about by our founding fathers, more than Montesquieu, more than Blackstone, more than Locke. But nevertheless, it's preposterous when these ignorant Democrats, when I say ignorant Democrats, I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt, but I think that that's actually being pretty generous, because I think that a lot of them just hate the truth, and of course are doing everything they can to deceive, because that's what they do. But actually the Republican Party was founded on one single platform, the platform that said a human being, this basic principle, a human being cannot be property. A human being cannot be the property of another human being. Fundamental. And that's what Lincoln, when he dodged Stephen Douglas, he dogged him, I should say, all around Illinois. If you read the history of Lincoln's earlier career in depth, that is what the Lincoln-Douglas debates were about. And there were more debates than what is commonly spoken about in some of the more general history of Lincoln, because they don't generally have that much time to get into it. But he was chasing Stephen Douglas all around Illinois, challenging him debates. He couldn't even get the attention, so he would show up at county fairs and places like that, and with very little audience, and challenge Douglas and get an audience that way, and eventually build up his reputation. But that party platform is the Republican Party. It still is. And it's so ironic how, especially when you look at the African American community, it's absolutely astounding how such a huge group of one ethnicity can be so polarized around a lie. It is a cult. The Democrat Party is a lying cult, and these people have been led there by their so-called leaders who they trusted. I'm not talking about Martin Luther King Jr. He would have been disgusted by this party of lying vipers. But these people, these hangers-on, these ignoble, despicable, dishonorable hangers-on of Martin Luther King, like Jesse Jackson, have exploited the people. He has sold their own people into slavery. And Al Sharpton and many of the others that you see featured on the MSNBCs and NBCs and the network news, those whom the liberals love so much and venerate so much, they are bamboozling these people, leading them straight to the Antichrist. It is just absolutely amazing. The Bible talks about, you're talking about the Apostle Paul writing to the churches and warning them saying to put everything to the test. Look at the fruits, not just the words. Deceivers. He says that Satan is like a savage wolf seeking whom he may devour. And that is what these Jesse Jackson and Al Sharptons are. Savage wolves. And Barack Obama is the ultimate savage wolf. Just tickling their ears. If they would only look at the fruits, what these people are advocating, what you have to advocate in order to be a Democrat and to support Barack Obama and the rest of the Democrat agenda. You have to sell out. You have to turn your back on God. If you claim that your God is Jesus Christ, if you claim that you are of Christ and you are supporting this, you have to turn your back on God deliberately and sell. Take your 30 pieces of silver. Your 30 pieces of silver are food stamps, perhaps, or perhaps affirmative action, some sort of preference, which is by its very nature wrong and immoral, as slavery was, that which gave approbation to slavery, that very line of thinking. If it's wrong, then it has to be wrong for a reason. There has to be a reason, not just because whether a majority supports it or not. It has to be wrong or right based upon truth, and that truth emanating from the God to whom you profess. So you have to take your 30 pieces of silver, whatever entitlement it might be, and say to God, this is more important to me. I'm going to vote for my interest, and I'm going to turn my back on the 50 million children being brutally murdered every day in this country because of you, because of your lack of conviction, because of your lack of integrity, because of your lack of spine, your selfishness, because you can look at the atrocities and point the finger at the Germans during Nazi Germany and think, oh, what a horrible thing, let's have a Holocaust museum. People like that are scum of the earth because they allowed the Holocaust to happen. Look at those pictures of all those bodies piled up. But you're doing the same thing. And worse, actually, because you've killed many. You're responsible for killing many, many more people, many millions more. And it gets very brutal in that sense. It's being expanded to the elderly as well. We see that coming. It's snowballing. The evil that allowed for abortion, the cheapening of life, is naturally being extended to the elderly as the economy worsens and healthcare issues. We have to put cost once again over the sanctity of life. And you claim that Jesus Christ is your Lord, and then you have to ignore the things that God said are an abomination. You have to, even though Barack Obama lied to you, and you know he lied to you in 2008 and said that he thinks marriage should be one man and one woman, in this antichrist, and he lied, and he is a spirit of antichrist, if not the antichrist. I used to think that was absurd, that very notion, because he's such an imbecile. But now when I see the blindness, the willful blindness of the general public, I don't think it's going to take much. People want to be deluded. This is living proof. It's a sickness, a blindness over the country that has allowed us to get to the point where many of us just enjoy doing evil and saying that good is evil and evil is good. It's a sickness. But nevertheless, not to get too far off topic, these are the things that you have to compromise in order to support this president and this party. So we have a African American ethnicity. Over 90% of them are following this Antichrist, who have actually turned their back on God and given over all those principles, all those commands of God, and the things that God said are an abomination. You've said to God, this is more important. There are, quote unquote, this was a common excuse, there are other issues in defense of what they did. There might be other issues, but not when it comes to life, the greatest gift that God ever gave us. He said, in regard to the children that are being brutally, barbarically murdered thanks to Barack Obama, he said it would be better for a man to have a millstone tied around his neck and cast into the sea than to cause one of these to stumble. Now, I would think that that might cover the brutality of abortion, causing a child to stumble. Would you think that maybe pouring saline solution on their skin and having it burn off, just because they're babies and they're defenseless, that's okay? It's the equivalent of napalm, by the way, just so you know. Or, as Barack Obama was one of those who supported partial birth abortion, having babies fully born and then all but the head, and then sticking a spike in the back of their neck and sucking their brains out through a vacuum. Do you think that that might fall under causing these children to stumble? Or having the botched abortion where the abortion went awry and the baby was born alive, but the mother didn't want the baby, so it's okay for them to put the baby in a utility closet, helpless, and sit there and cry and for however long it takes for them to die without any assistance. That's what you support. Those are the other issues. So tell me, ladies and gentlemen, if you supported Barack Obama and you profess to be a Christian, how are you going to feel? I mean, if you really believe. I mean, okay, if you're one of the people that just say you're a Christian because you were born that way and you're one of the majority Christians, like they say that 80% of America's Christian. If you're one of those who just pay lip service to it and it's more of a tradition, that's one thing. But if you are, let's say, one of the African Americans who overwhelmingly supported Barack Hussein Obama, how are you going to feel if you actually believe that there is going to be a day of judgment where every knee shall bow and every tongue will confess that he is Lord, that Jesus Christ is Lord? How are you going to feel when we all, on that final judgment day, when you have to stand in front of God and explain that there were other issues? And you have to tell God, well, you know, God, even though your eye is on the sparrow, and even though the Son of Man didn't have a place to lay his head at night, but God took care of him. You just couldn't do it, God. You weren't capable of providing. I needed the government. I needed Barack Hussein Obama. I needed Nancy Pelosi. I needed Harry Reid to take care of me. You were incapable, God. So, God, I knew better than you. I know you're mad, but I knew better than you. I had to let those millions of children die because I was more important, because you couldn't have fed me like the sparrow. I had to do it myself. How's that going to fly? Now, no doubt I'll get the scurrilous notes from those who are watching this video, the liberals who don't believe in God, and that's fine. Let it fly. You can make fun of people who believe in God, but I'm just talking to, because I know that many African Americans are very much, at least professing to be Christians, but when you're talking 94% of people voting for Barack Obama, that these numbers don't reconcile. So there is a great error. And as the Apostle Paul wrote letters in reprimanding churches for deviating from the Scriptures, and said to put everything to the test, and said that savage wolves would come seeking whom they may devour. And he said, take heed that no man deceive you. He warned of these times. Somebody's got to do it, and I'm going to do it. And you people can say I'm racist and whatever. I'm not. I love the African American people. And I really have a burden, a love for the African American people in general. And I've spent a lot of time volunteering in ministries in the inner city. I mean, really, if you want to know my heart, this is out of love. So you can call me a racist or whatever you want, but I encourage the African American people who actually hear me and listen to me, if your heart is open, to look to people, real leaders in this country. If you want to look to, I mean, I don't think it's about color, but if you want to look to African Americans who have been scorned and really treated evilly for taking such a stand, look at Allen West, look at Alan Keyes, and many more. I mean, men who serve their country, who really know the Scriptures, and look at how they are vilified for taking a stand for the cause of Christ. But going back to the original thesis, talking about Chuck Todd's comment, saying that the Republican Party would like to go back to the days of slavery, or if it were left up to them, we would still have slavery. The very principle upon which this party was founded is that a human being cannot be the property of a human being. That is the same principle then as now. The same principle that demands that we recognize the sanctity of all life and not allow life to be defined by sick, evil people like Barack Obama for their own selfish interests. If a human being cannot be the property of another human being because they are created by God, we are all equal in the eyes of God. Not we're all equal that we all have the same amount of exact stuff or that we all have the same skills. No, we're not all as good at certain things as others, but we are all equal in terms of our value. That's what the founding documents say, and that's what Martin Luther King alluded to when he said, I'm here to cash that check. He wasn't vilifying our founding fathers or founding documents. He was praising it essentially and saying, we're here to cash that check, because that check was the very thing that would prevent slavery, and is the very same thing that actually preserves the sanctity of life. A human being cannot be property. A human being, it stands to reason, cannot be a slave. And the same thing is the central argument for abortion is that everybody knows, science is confirmed, the debate is not whether that's a human life. The debate is, quote unquote, reproductive rights. So what's being said here is, keep your laws off my body. Well, that human being is not the mother's body. That human being resides in that mother's body. So the fundamental argument is that the Democrats make, that the Democrat Party is based upon, is that a human being within the womb of a mother is therefore her property. It is a very weak and flimsy argument. It doesn't hold water. And if you believe that, then you believe in slavery, Chuck Todd. And that's really what this all comes down to, Chuck. You're a phony, lying, pseudo-intellectual who just wants to be received. You just want to be liked. You liberals are like, you never left high school. You just want to fit in. You want to be accepted by your peers because your arguments make no sense. If enough people would just think through and use critical thinking, use logic even, and just think about where your weak arguments lie and what they lead to, they do not make sense. Chuck Todd, Andrea Mitchell, Brian Williams, David Gregory, all of you people, Schiffer, I don't want to leave anybody out. You people are all followers. You're lemmings. You're either deceived or you're just evil and you like to deceive. So, I don't want to speak for you, but the bottom line is Chuck Todd is pro-slavery, and he doesn't know it. David Gregory, Andrea Mitchell, Brian Williams, you're all pro-slavery. It's the same sickness. Everybody likes to point the finger at everybody else. You can point to a lot of world history and people, like you could single out the Germans and say, oh, those Germans, look how evil they were. It's a sickness that is in all of mankind, the propensity for evil and the propensity to cover up and to be in denial. And that is what the aforementioned litany of people are susceptible to and actually are ruled by. They're hypocrites. They're either, if we suppose them to be sincere, then we must often pity their ignorance. But if insincere, then we must abhor the spirit of deception which they betray. As Alexander Hamilton once said about the Jay Treaty. The whole premise, everything for which the Democrat stands, is contrary to the natural state of man and the way that God made us. It all sounds good. The utopian fantasy sounds great, but it's unnatural and it requires evil to implement it because you have to enslave other people. That's the great irony. These people who are being told that we want to make them slaves are already slaves, and they're following this savage wolf right off the cliff. The Bible says in Proverbs that there is a way that seemeth right unto man, but the end thereof is death. Thank you for joining me. I'm Scott Ryan.